Have you ever wondered why Europe, a continent thousands of miles away, decided to invade Africa in the late 19th century? It's a question that digs into the heart of a complex and fascinating period of history. A time when European powers embarked on an intense competition for control over the African continent. This event, known as the Scramble for Africa, is rife with intrigue, conflict, and geopolitical maneuvering. Today, we uncover the reasons and chronology behind Europe's infamous Scramble for Africa. To understand the Scramble for Africa, we must first travel back to the 1880s. This was a time when Europe was undergoing profound changes. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, had transformed the continent's economic landscape, ushering in an era of unprecedented growth and prosperity. Cities were expanding, factories were churning out goods at an astonishing rate, and new technologies were revolutionizing the way people lived and worked. Europe was buzzing with energy and activity, a hive of human ingenuity and ambition. But this progress came at a cost. Resources were being consumed at an alarming rate, and nations were on the lookout for new sources of raw materials to fuel their growth. Simultaneously, a fierce spirit of nationalism was sweeping across the continent. Countries were vying for prestige and power, eager to assert their dominance on the global stage. The idea of empire had a strong allure. It promised wealth, status, and influence, and European leaders were not immune to its charms. And so, as the 1880s rolled around, the stage was set. The pieces were in place. Europe was ready to embark on a new venture, one that would forever alter the course of history. The Industrial Revolution had given them the means. Nationalism had given them the motive. As Europe's power grew, so did its ambitions, setting the stage for one of history's largest land grabs. With a burgeoning industrial economy, Europe set its sights on Africa, a continent rich with resources and potential. As the 19th century unfolded, the European powers found themselves embroiled in a fierce competition, a race for colonial expansion that would be known as the Scramble for Africa. This scramble was not a random dash, but rather a calculated and systematic process aimed at exploiting Africa's abundant natural resources and strategic geographical position. It was in the heart of Berlin, in the winter of 1884, that the curtain rose on this scramble. The Berlin Conference, a gathering of 14 European nations, heralded the beginning of this era. Ostensibly meant to regulate trade and resolve territorial disputes in Africa, the conference in reality was a grand scheme to carve up the continent among the European powers. With the stroke of a pen, and without any African representation, the fate of a continent was sealed. Borders were drawn, territories claimed, and spheres of influence established, all in the name of civilization and progress. From the bustling markets of Lagos to the verdant landscapes of the Congo, from the golden sands of the Sahara to the rugged highlands of Ethiopia, no corner of Africa was left untouched by this scramble. The establishment of European colonies followed swiftly. Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, Italy, each had their slice of the African pie. These new colonies were more than just territories. They were the lifeblood of Europe's industrial economy, providing raw materials, cheap labor, and new markets. The scramble transformed Africa, but not for the better. The once diverse independent kingdoms were replaced by European administrative systems, native cultures and traditions were suppressed, and the continent was plunged into a cycle of exploitation and subjugation. By 1914, Africa was not the same. The continent that once boasted of diverse independent kingdoms was now divided under European rule. The Scramble for Africa, a monumental event, left an indelible mark on the continent. This transformative period wasn't merely a reshuffling of territories, it was an upheaval that altered the very fabric of African societies. The impact was far-reaching and multifaceted. Culturally, the Europeans' arrival resulted in a massive cultural exchange. African societies were introduced to European languages, religions, and customs. Some of these elements were embraced and became part of the African cultural landscape, while others clashed with traditional African values and norms, causing tension and conflict. Economically, the Scramble for Africa was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it brought about the development of infrastructure such as roads, railways, and ports. These developments facilitated trade and allowed for the exploitation of Africa's vast natural resources. On the other hand, this exploitation often served the interests of the European powers more than the African people. African resources were extracted and exported, often with little benefit to the local economies. Politically, the scramble for Africa sowed the seeds of many contemporary conflicts. The arbitrary borders drawn by European powers often grouped together diverse ethnic and cultural groups with long-standing rivalries. These tensions, exacerbated by the legacy of colonial rule, have led to numerous conflicts and political instability in many African nations. The long-term effects of the scramble for Africa are still felt today. The cultural, economic, and political landscapes of Africa have been irreversibly shaped by this period. The languages spoken, the religions practiced, the economies built, and the political boundaries drawn all bear the imprint of Europe's scramble for African territories. The repercussions of this event go beyond the African continent. The global balance of power, the international trade system, and the cultural exchanges that have shaped our world can all trace their roots back to the scramble for Africa. The echoes of the scramble for Africa continue to resonate in today's world, a testament to its profound impact.
So, why did Europe invade Africa? The answer, as we've seen, is a complex blend of economic, political, and social factors. From the late 19th century into the early 20th, the scramble for Africa represented an era of intense competition among European powers for control over African territory. The driving forces behind this scramble were many, from the lure of economic gain and natural resources to the desire for political dominance and strategic advantage. Also, social aspects like the spread of Christianity and the concept of a civilizing mission played a significant part. The consequences of this scramble were profound and far-reaching. It led to the reconfiguration of Africa's political and cultural landscape, the creation of artificial borders, and a legacy of conflict and instability that continues to echo in the present day. As we delve into history, we uncover the intricate patterns that have shaped our world, reminding us that our past continues to influence our present and future.